and Garrett both talk a lot about the depth on the roster, just generally pitching, hitting. How would you say that depth compares to what you guys have had?
We'll find out here in about 3 weeks. You think you got one thing, and a lot of times you don't know until you really get out there and start competing against another team. But I would say so. I mean, I think probably what both these guys have spoken to is just there's not a lot of drop-off between guys that you're trying to probably make decisions on with the starting nine. And then just still so, again, it's a bit comforting knowing that there's a lot of candidates to start, and that's a little uncomfortable saying, hey, we don't know who those guys are just yet, because there are a lot. There are a lot of guys that you feel like are capable of fulfilling a role. And again, I think the thing that does make me feel really good is that they're going to be eager to fulfill those roles, whatever they are.
Who do you think right now, I know you probably don't have your starting rotation hammered out right yet, but who's competing for those roles right now? What are some finalists?
We got about 23 of them competing. So we're still, after the fall, we had kind of your usual suspects, the guys that, have Drew and Brett Sears, and, you've had Brockett's made quite a few starts through his career. I think Will Walsh is probably one of the more unsung heroes of last year's team, kind of stepped in and won some games that we really needed, from him. And, obviously he's really the one that's back that has the most experience in my mind, just as far as navigating the lineup and those type of things. Caleb Clark was in our weekend rotation to start the year, and we got several newcomers that could fulfill those roles as well. And I think the challenge that we have with the pitching staff is there's some guys I feel like could start that maybe our staff would be better if they were in the pen, and vice versa. Maybe some guys that we really need to be starters, because if they're not, then the role may not be quite there for them. So that may sound a little crazy, but I think that's just the way that it goes. You've got some guys maybe that are a little better suited to start games or have a clean inning versus coming in with a little bit of grease in there. So we've got some guys we're looking at. We've got some freshmen that we're stretching out. We've got some transfers that we're stretching out. We've got some returners. Yesterday was really the first day that we've had kind of, more of a simulated, more than just, hey, everybody gets 5 pitches and out, more of just kind of getting a look at it. And then obviously today with kind of the start of official practice, it'll be more of the same. And then hopefully next week we get the 50-degree weather that they're calling for. We'll be able to get outside and get a look at that.
Did you get the sense during the fall that you had guys in that kind of embraced that high leverage bullpen role for this year's roster, I guess, that maybe weren't there last year?
Yeah, and I think part of it is because they've already done it. They've already kind of been in those situations before, whether it been in junior college or the Division I level. We've got guys that have saved games at the D1 level. Freilich saved 7 games. I think Sanders had 4 or 5 saves last year for UNO. Borst was a closer. In junior college, Casey Dice has done a little bit of everything that way. And Kyle Perry is another guy that I think his best outings last year were, he was 3 for 3 in save opportunities. So we have some guys that have been in that role before, whereas last year I think we were kind of more thrusting some guys into roles and finding out the hard way at times that maybe some guys weren't suited for it. And you've got a guy like Fromm coming back that probably would have been ready for that role last year that got hurt, so he's back too, and he's healthy, and he's another guy you could throw into that mix.
Coach, what do you see as the identity of this team at the stage of the game?
Yeah, I think what we've really shown as a group of position players is you got to kind of kick them out of the cages. I mean, they're cage rats. You get that a lot with a junior college player because that's pretty much all they do. They go to class and they go hang out at the baseball field all day. So we have a lot of guys that kind of fit that bill. And I think just the ability, we've really focused on it, knowing that we need it more potentially. But you always get to that point, too, where you're like, man, we need to make sure that the guys understand exactly what we're asking of them and just go dominate those roles. And we have some of those guys in our lineup that will do that. And then just as far as, the whole team, there's some new ideas, some new faces into the coaching staff. It brings a little bit of renewed energy with that stuff as well. And I just think, we're always going to try to be the toughest team in the country. So whether we get there or not, it remains to be seen.
I asked Drew, how do you replace 2 impact bats like Max and Bryce from last year, top of the order, He mentioned Gabe and Carey as two of those guys, but for you as the manager, do you see two people that can step into those roles, or are you trying to collectively squeeze what you can out of them?
Yeah, the last thing I want is for Gabe Swanson and Dylan Carey to try to go replicate what they saw last year. And for Gabe to just try to go chase the numbers that he put up last year on his own. I mean, he ended up with 18 and, hit around 300. So I don't want those guys chasing numbers. I want those guys chasing roles and just doing what it takes to pass the line for the team. That's really the biggest thing that we're going to ask of everybody is just, it's not going to be two guys that step up and take those two guys' places. I mean, it's going to be a collective effort from the group, and it's going to look a lot different, I think, than what we saw that way, because we don't maybe have a first and a second rounder in the lineup. Maybe we do. Maybe some guys emerge, but it's not going to come from chasing those numbers, just like those two guys didn't do last year. They didn't chase the numbers from the get-go. I don't think anybody saw, a 2020 season before the year, except maybe the guys in the clubhouse and maybe some of the coaches that saw Bryce Matthews' ability. So, not going to be two guys that step up and do that, but probably a collective effort.
Who are some impact transfers, new guys on maybe the JUCO side, or even the freshmen too, who could make an impact day one and find their way into the lineup?
Well, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of guys that we brought in that we needed to make an instant impact. I mean, there's going to be several in the lineup. There could be, and maybe guys that you saw in the outside competitions in the fall that hit at the top of the order. Silva, Sanderson, Stone. There's others in there as well. Josh Overbeek, who didn't play in the scrimmages in the fall, has kind of been a mainstay for us. So there's going to be quite a few guys that are going to need to step into those roles. Brumbaugh, who wasn't healthy last year, and then on the pitching side, there's a lot of new faces. Obviously, we got to replace 2 weekend starters and a lot of bullpen pieces in there that there's some talented freshmen in there, probably as talented a group of freshmen as we've had on the mound. And those guys are going to get an opportunity right away. And there's probably some more swing and miss stuff in the bullpen, I would say. Guys that we alluded to Olson's breaking ball, Clevenger's got a plus breaking ball, Freilich. There's some other guys in there that have more swing and miss stuff to where if you do get in a jam or you do have an opportunity to bring a guy out of the pen, he's used to doing that. He's used to pitching with traffic, and he's used to being breaking ball ready, we say, right out of the pen. So there's a lot of guys on the mound that we're going to ask to step up right away.
Coach, when it comes to Drew Christo, how have you seen him grow up on the field and off the field?
Yeah, he's always been a really mature kid. Just top of his class out of high school, always been very well-spoken, 3-sport athlete. So he's always been very mature, and he's always worked hard. I think you've seen the confidence grow, though. He didn't have to face a ton of adversity like a lot of kids, coming out of high school, and he had to face it at this level with a lot of high expectations. So a lot of his work's been done behind the scenes in Alaska, going and playing summer baseball and just kind of fine-tuning some things and finding himself. And he had a lot of good moments for us last year. I mean, he didn't have a big impact out of the pen late in the season, but he was in the pen ready to come in several spots there in the Big Ten tournament if needed. That kind of shows you where the confidence level was on our end for him. Even though he didn't necessarily get into some of those games, we were ready to put him in the fire there. And we just have seen that confidence grow. Over the summer, he kind of found some things, and then into the fall, just his ability to repeat his delivery has allowed him to be in that mix, to be one of our top starters.
Coach, you got FanFest coming up. Just what do you want Husker fans to know about this year's team in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we always are very grateful for the fans that we have and the support that we have. They show up when it's cold, when it's sleeting, when the sun's shining. So we're always very grateful for our fans. Again, I said it the day I was hired. I've said it every year when I stood up here. I want our fans to leave the field saying that team they're hard-nosed, they're tough. And that's what we want to, be known for. And, not just some days, but every day.
How have the new members on the coaching staff kind of bought into that mentality that you want across the entire organization?
Yeah, there's not really a whole lot that needed to be. I think we're all kind of cut from that cloth as it is. I mean, Coach Childers has been here in a non-coaching role. Obviously, he's been here for the best teams in school history as an assistant coach, and that's what he's all about. And Coach Sirianni, same thing. I mean, he's cut from that cloth. He's just a grinder. He's put your head down and work, and don't ask questions, and just go do your job. And that rubs off on the players when no task is too big or too small for your staff. The guys tend to really buy into that as well.
Coach, what was your kind of, from your perspective, the competitiveness of the fall and the competitiveness of this team? What does that look like, and how does that maybe pay off later on down the year in a midweek situation or a Sunday where you have a chance to win a series?
Yeah, it does. It's a big deal, and it's something that we've obviously harped on, given some of the disappointments in Getaway Day or Championship Sunday, as we call it, and then the midweeks have been well documented, well chronicled from last year. So, just preaching that mentality. We played 3-game series every week in the fall. It came down to the third game. It got a little chippy at times, which is how we like it, where guys are kind of going back and forth at each other a little bit, and that's what it takes. I mean, you have to have that will to win. I mean, and you got to have the will to prepare to win as well. And so that's kind of what we've been trying to train these guys to understand is, there's some guys that have been up in the podium today before me that haven't had that taste of postseason yet. Anglem got to see it as a red shirt, but they're hungry to do that and to help lead the charge. And that started in the fall. It was very, very competitive and continues to be competitive this spring as we start to try to solidify some roles.
In terms of just season expectations, I mean, you guys have been pretty consistent over the years about hosting a regional. Is that kind of conversation starts, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it an expectation on our end. I mean, that's just kind of that's what we'll always strive to do. I'm not going to sit up here and say this is what we're going to do, but that's always going to be our goal. It starts there. And how do you do that? Well, you show up with a great mindset every day, and you have to have talented enough players that can go execute the roles that you're asking them to execute, and you got to have deep enough pitching staff to go win the Tuesday games, and you got to have a deep enough lineup where some guys are struggling that you can plug a guy in and he can go get the job done. And you win series when you do that, you win midweeks when you do that, you win 40 games when you do that, and you host regionals when you do that. So that's always going to be our goal. Again, it's not. For us, it's different. The expectation, we bring that on. We say, we're at Nebraska. That's what we want to do, be a top 16 team, and there's a lot that goes into that. So you're not going to do it every year, but that's where you got to start.
Is it Fromm's back? Is anybody limited to start the practice here?
No, we're doing pretty good from the injury front as far as, the arms and guys healthy with the position players.
What's the impact of Coach Sirianni been over the last? I know he's done some good stuff on the recruiting trail too, but in terms of coaching and in practice and those sorts of things, and will he get? Have you sorted out duties? Is he going to have first base?
Yeah. So he'll have first base, and it's been great just because he's coached third base and run an offense at this level before. He sees the game from that lens at first base, so now you have two guys out there that are kind of seeing the game from that lens, and that'll help with base running and some of those things. If you look at his offenses, they've stolen a lot of bases in the past. That's something I think he's helped bring a different set of ideas for us from that standpoint. And he'll have that role. He's coached the infielders, and I'll always be involved with the infielders. Just kind of that's where I, got my start. But he does a great job there. And then with the hitting side of it, he's a guy that just wants to help. He just wants to. And there's some new terminology. Garrett spoke to it a little bit. Just little things, little cues that maybe he's used through the years that he's seen success with guys that maybe we've tried to say it in a different way and it resonates, the way he says it. So he's a great communicator. He's a worker. Exactly the things that I thought, coming and hiring him. He's made a major impact, and look forward to seeing how that plays out, with our offense this spring.